All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Nahant Public Schools School Committee meeting for October 8th, 2019. The first order of business is the saluting of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the next order of business is reading and approval of the 9/10/2019 minutes. We tabled this last week last meeting because there was not a quorum to review it.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes from September 10th, 2019.
Now, let me just think if we have,
Yeah, I think you'll have to table because.
I think we have to
Oh,
table
till Mr.
again
Trias.
because Lori and Mike were absent at that meeting. And
Okay.
tonight Tom is absent.
Okay.
So, yes, so we will table that one again. Thank you. So the next order of business is the reading and approval of the September 24th, 2019 minutes. And we have a quorum to vote on that one.
I was absent, so I'm going to be abstaining.
I'll make a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes for September 24th, school committee meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And the chair's in favor as well. Thank you. So moving on, the next item, order of business, is correspondence and community input. Anyone have any?
Should I address the bus schedule or
Sure.
this?
I was going to, but please feel free to.
Well, in my neighborhood, the bus, actually Dahlia, who does our video, would speak to this. I know that her son takes the same bus over to the middle school as my daughter. I don't know which number bus it is, but it would be the bus that departs the Johnson School, follows down Emerald Road. Its final stop before it leaves for the middle school is at Summer Street and Nahant Road, and it had been late consistently for more than a week. And when I mean late, I mean 15 to 20 minutes late, in which case, because that bus picks up high school students as well as middle school students, so therefore the high school students, from what I understand, were late. Excused, obviously, because it's a transportation issue, but after that had gone on for multiple occasions, I reached out to Mr. Pierantozzi. I had spoken to some of my neighbors, some other folks who have students who take that bus over to Swampscott. Mr. Pierantozzi contacted the Healy Bus Corporation, and I can report as of today even, my daughter is telling me that bus has been on time. So since the end of last week, it's now back on schedule.
Madam Chair, if I may, I would like the school committee members to know that the dispatcher and one of the supervisors at the Healy Bus Company, and I spoke to both of them, were extremely supportive and action ready. As a matter of fact, it's my understanding that a supervisor actually did the route the day after I called, which I believe was Wednesday. I think that's important to know that not only was there a bus that was late and causing issues for kids getting to the Swampscott secondary schools, but the Healy Bus Company, as soon as they found out about it, they jumped right on it. And my understanding from Mrs. Ballantyne is, since I made that call, the bus has been on schedule.
So in the future, if a bus is late, should you be notified?
Oh, absolutely.
Wait a whole week, that seems, and
Yeah.
I'm not being critical, because I can imagine kids not mentioning it for a day or two.
Sure.
But it,
Right.
Yeah, it can't do any harm, Madam Chair. The obvious thing is, traffic is traffic, and one day doesn't mean there's an issue. But if it's more than one day, I would say parents and guardians or students themselves, because they are middle school and high school students, they can call the school and leave a message, and I'll call the Healy Bus Company. Absolutely. And, we'll do whatever we can. Obviously, we have a contract. The schedule is part of that contract. And if a bus is X number of minutes late, 5 minutes late once in a while, that's one thing. But 20 minutes on a regular basis is absolutely not acceptable. And the students were getting to school late. I'm actually surprised that Mr. Andrews didn't get a call from the principal. Usually that happens. So, but I'm glad it's been solved, and right now everything is copacetic. Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you. Anyone else have any correspondence or community input?
Actually, I do have one. I think with the chair's permission, I'll turn this over to Mrs. Valentine, actually. When I came into work today, there was a check on my desk from the 2017,
18.
sixth grade. The parents, of course, raise money every year for the sixth grade activities, and there was a generous check that was the money that was left over in that account that we are going to use with the permission of the parents and the leadership of that sixth grade to pay for the outdoor furniture that was just delivered. So at the next school committee meeting, you will be asked to approve 970?
I believe it was ballpark $912.
I know it was over $900, so it's very generous. And on behalf of all the students, these teachers, thank you so much to the parents of that sixth grade.
That's great.
If any of those folks are watching, then yes, we were all kind of in it together, as the sixth grade parents usually are. The sixth grade students worked for that money as well. They did a car wash, and we did some slush days, and we raised money, for the graduation ceremony, festivities, and some other things, and they had a fantastic celebration, and with that money left over, and it was always the blessing of those parents, my fellow parents of that graduating year, that the forest playground was just an idea at that point. I don't think that even any ground had been broken, but I know Liz Carlson with NEF, and she was a parent in that grade, and some of the other parents, we all felt like the forest playground was where we'd want that donation to go. So it's great. It's a long time coming, and I'm sorry it took so long for us to find a particular thing, but I'm glad that, the kids can, come back to their old school and sit down at those picnic tables and feel proud.
Absolutely. I thank you for thinking of us and thinking of that kind of contribution, and I think it's especially nice that it was specifically current sixth graders who said, when I brought them back the design, said, geez, we'd like to have more places to gather. And so that was their idea, to actually originally have some seating where the tables are now. So
That's
thank you.
great. And thank you, Mr. Andrews, for coordinating.
My pleasure.
They look nice.
They do, I saw them. They do look nice. The benches are great, too. Yes.
That's great, thanks. So examination and authorization for payment of bills, I know is ongoing. So we will move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Parentozzi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first order of business is to update the members of the community and the school committee on our security cameras. We had a technician in 2 weeks ago. Now we have a clear view of 16 of our 17 cameras. For some reason, the 17th one is causing an issue, which we will have the technician back. We are also working with the police. They also have 16 cameras on their screens at the police station, and we continue to work with the fire department to get the view on our cameras on their laptops, because they would prefer to have it in their vehicles. So it's there's some technical issues, but we will work it out. I think it's interesting, the cameras were used for something that, frankly, I didn't foresee when we installed them. Obviously, we were looking for security and for, in case something dangerous would occur, or in case we had to create evidence of something. But in the last week, Ms. April looked up and she saw a primary student on a railing kind of hanging out over one of our stairwells. And she was able to, number one, contact an adult who immediately went down there to secure the student before he or she, to protect the innocent, bounced down the stairwell. And number two, you know, if there was any question about if and when the parent was contacted, we had the video evidence that, you know, instead of doing what that student was supposed to be doing, they were doing something that was unhealthy, potentially harmful. So I hadn't really given that much thought, and it just came right to the forefront. So the interior cameras are useful in ways that I hadn't even thought about.
Interior stairwell.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
the last 4 cameras were put at the bottom and the top of the 2 stairwells, and they were areas that the fire department initially had asked for. Now we find out after this incident, it's really good to have them for the health and safety of students who choose to do things that aren't very healthy. So it's kind of neat. Madam Chair, rolling right along to 5B, the district crisis team report on...
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
I think it's also important that this allows students freedom to walk to the restrooms independently at a certain age.
Yeah.
And, you know, because if for fear that a child hurt themselves in the stairway, I think privileges like that would be taken away.
Right.
Or reconsidered, so, you know, it's not that people weren't being unsupervised. There are times when they are permitted to be. So.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. In the Johnson School, because of our size and because of the grades that we have and the way they are arranged, students, in fact, at a very young age, can move around the building. And now with the interior cameras, which we never had before, not that we're spying on them, but, you know, we do, in fact, have some video evidence that they are fulfilling their obligation and being responsible. So the district crisis team met on 10/1, October 1st. In attendance was myself, Mr. Andrews, Ms. Shanahan, Ms. Brown, our nurse, Cheryl Delicio, who acts as the chair, Dennis Ball, the former DPW director, but the emergency management director for the town, Chief Dwyer. We added two individuals, one a police officer, Mike Haley, and another Carl Macario. Do you know what Carl, is he a police officer?
No, he's not an officer, but he is supporting the department.
He may be a call officer, and he owns a private business. We reviewed our emergency drills and our timeline. We talked about school safety and security, and we are continuing to work on creating a threat assessment team. I think it's noteworthy for the school committee to know that I'm on a statewide committee that is involved in creating a crisis response plan for all schools in the state. What the committee is aware of is, if you think of a spectrum with all the schools that are in Massachusetts, it goes from schools that really are absolutely top-notch when it comes to safety and security, and personally I think the Johnson School is in that realm. And then we have schools that, for a variety of reasons, are not. And what the team is doing is we are creating an assessment, and we are looking for a pilot school, which the crisis team agreed that if the team wants to use the Johnson School, that would be okay, to go in and to assess how the school meets the guidelines of the FBI's 7 most important things about having a secure school. Members of the team involved are school officials like myself, the executive director of the Massachusetts Partnerships for Youth, FBI, Secret Service, and private security individuals. So it's kind of interesting. Because of the breadth of the committee, our progress is measured and not rapid, because it takes time to get people from these many walks of life together. But really excited about it. We've talked to the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents executive director, and he's excited about it. So what we hope to do is to create a tool that people can really, once it's fine-tuned, take into their school districts and actually do a self-assessment about where they are on that continuum of safe schools. So we talked about that. We analyzed our hazards emergency procedures binder. We decided to continue to use our flip charts because they're in good shape and they're very inclusive. And what we're going to add to the flip chart is every year when we update the members of the crisis team, we will put the members of the crisis team and our contact emails and our contact phone numbers in the flip chart so that any staff member has all those contacts at their disposal. We also talked about updating and improving our smart button system, which we actually, Mr. Andrews and I met about that today, which we are going to do. And just as a reminder, all of our cell phones are loaded with a button that looks like this. And if I press that button for 3 seconds, everyone on the system would get an emergency contact. So, and the reason we went to this versus what we had when I came here, which was, it was connected to our desktops, is this is mobile. If you're at recess or if you're on a field trip, it will work anywhere that you have phone connectivity. And it's really a good system. And our crisis management team, who obviously are much more expert than I, really emphasized that we should continue to use it because it's really one of the best tools that we can have at our disposal.
What kind of updating is required?
Updating would be required because A, people have left, And if we don't purge them from the system, you know, a retiree is going to get emergency contact.
Right, so it's updated
We've
contracts.
hired a lot of people this year. A lot of them are one-day-a-week people, so it really takes a lot of effort to make sure that they are on the system. And if you miss them on a day, you don't get them, you know, you don't have contact with them for another week. And the system is changing a little bit. As most things that are technology-based, it's improving. But every time there's an improvement, you get the intended result, and then you get the unintended result. So Charles Lockwood, our technology specialist, is working on it with Kevin. And we will, it's functional. But, you know, and all the important people in town are on the system, the police, the fire, you know, none of that has changed, but it just needs to be updated.
Okay, so it's not the technology that has to be updated, it's the contacts, it's who has it on their devices.
Right. And when we update it, we're going to do a test run. And the other thing the crisis team wanted us to do is a test on our panic button. In our main office, there's a button that if any person pushes it, there's an instantaneous message that goes to the police departments. And we want to make sure that's functioning, because obviously we don't push it unless there's an emergency. So I want to thank all the members of the district crisis team, and I also want to make sure the school committee is aware of the fact that we also have a school crisis team that's different. So we have internal crisis management and we have community-wide crisis management. And the last thing you should know is that the emergency management team from the town is looking at the possibility of using some of our vault space down beneath the first floor of the school as storage for their emergency provisions. That would be water, food, blankets, cots, and those types of things, which makes a lot of sense because the Johnson School is the emergency site. So right now, they're on a trailer somewhere, and rather than dragging them to the Johnson School, they're going to evaluate whether the space we have is appropriate.
So like a basement space?
Yes. You go down into the lowest level, go near the boiler room, make a left, you actually go underneath the first floor and the gym. You've never been there.
No, no. Don't want to go.
It will need some cleaning up, but, you know, it's doable. And it's really the largest storage space that the town has. We talked about maybe using the bunker, but the moisture in the bunker it makes it not tenable. Okay. And the last thing, actually there's two things that are related. We asked for and received an extension from the October 1 report. Unfortunately, the data that we need for Chris and I to do Schedule 1 and Schedule 9, which are basically town expenses and costs for education, the data is not ready for a variety of reasons. We have new staff here at Town Hall, and they have a new software package, which everyone is getting used to using. So we did get a short extension to October 18th. I do want you to know that if we miss that deadline, it is likely that our state aid will be frozen. Not taken, just not sent. So, you know, it's important for us to meet that deadline. And in a related item, even though we're talking about the fiscal 19 and we are in fiscal 20, you will be getting data in front of you about fiscal 21 because it's almost budget time development again. And as you know, I like to do the budget development slowly, step by step, over a longer period of time than perhaps has been done in the past, to give us an opportunity to think and to interface with town hall officials, the town manager and the town accountant, to make sure that we are in a good place when moving forward vis-a-vis the overall expenditures in the town. So that, you know, a brief presentation probably next time.
In terms of the 10/18 deadline, does the town feel confident they'll be able to get you the numbers by a week from Friday? Or what is the 18th? Today's the 8th. Yeah.
I have made it clear in writing to the town accountant that we need it, and we need it several days in front of that because it has to be uploaded. But you know, they're all working very hard, and they have other pressing things like the tax bills that need to go out. So, you know, I'll keep communicating. You know, if we miss it, we don't want to miss it. We want to meet our deadlines, obviously. But we are not in the financial condition that first of all, we don't get that much money from the state. It's not like a big school district where we're talking, you know, a quarterly check of multiple millions of dollars.
Right.
If it's frozen for a brief period of time, you know, it's business as usual for us. But obviously, we want to meet our obligations. It's part of our responsibility.
That is a precedent, leave it to this.
You know, we just can't do it without the data.
Right.
Okay. And thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the principal's report. Ms.
Well,
Erica-
Madam Chair, I'm the principal for about, for one sheet of paper.
Okay. Mr. Maranzazzi then.
And then it's going to be turned over, I'm going to turn it over with your permission, Madam Chair, to the principal, to the real principal. Although I was principal for a day this month, right?
Yeah, that's right. And he just
So in your packet, you have multiple sheets of paper, and I am going to talk to you about the first two. With the MCAS official accountability report for the Johnson School, we have really good news to report to you. And I'm going to try to make this relatively complex report pretty simple. So I want you to go to the overall results on the first page. And go down to the black bar where you see 2018 and 2019. And you will see that our results from 2019 are 25 percentage points better than our results from 2018. Now, what does that mean? It means a variety of things. Number one, our students did well on the MCAS, better than last year. It means that there's a progressive weighting on the results. So if you look at the very bottom left of that box, you'll see it says 2018 times 40%, 2019 times 60%. What that means is that the 2019 results are 20% more important than the 2018 results. And as we transition to the online MCAS 2.0, as we call it, that number every year will grow. So in 2020, I don't know what the number will be. I'm guessing it may be 80%. So every year, the results are more heavily weighted. And so what you see is that the number in the middle of that page, 67%, means that we are making substantial progress towards our targets, which is where we want to be. That also, if you remember, I told you we were in Tier 1 accountability last time. That's why. Because we are making substantial progress. The next box I really don't want to get into, because that's the mathematical computation of how they came out with that. If, you know, and you've just seen this for the first time. So, you know, if you do want to talk about it, I would suggest let the chair or I know, and we'll put it back on the agenda next time. But it's how they got to that 67% cumulative criterion reference target percentage. And then the next box is last year's data. And if you go to the second page, at the bottom of that box, you'll see our criteria reference target percentage last year was 52%, as compared to 77% this year, which gives us the 2-year average of 67.
77, right?
Does that make sense? So this year, our scores were in the 77th percent of their calculation. Last year, we were in the 52nd percent. The 2-year average, using the fact that last year is 40% of the number, this year is 60% of the number, ends up with the 67%, which is good. That's the bottom line. Our students are growing and improving. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I will turn it over to the principal, and we'll go through the other sheets in front of you, and you can see clearly how that came about.
Can you answer just one question?
Sure.
In summary, the 67% progress towards meeting targets means?
It means that we are meeting our target for achievement and growth. Both.
We are meeting our target.
We are. And the key is the word substantial progress. If we weren't, if we were kind of, a little bit up, it would say some, or it could say almost, it could say not meeting.
Does the state provide a range? So substantial is this percentage to this percentage?
It's my understanding, and again, this is all pretty new.
I'm not sure either, to be honest.
Yeah, this is all pretty new. It's my understanding that it's based on our own data
From prior years. So it's not comparable to the other
No.
districts in the state?
And that was the big change. The big change was there was a statewide criterion that suburban districts had no problem meeting, urban districts could never meet, and districts in the middle sometimes met, because it was a statewide, you know what means and medians do when you're, when you have 65% of your students who are English language learners and a high percentage of special education kids in poverty. This system, it's more based on how we do compared to how we did. And that's why every year the factor grows. So as we get into the next sheet, then I think Madam Chair, you will see that the data becomes a little bit more concrete. Mm-hmm. The summary is a little vague, but the data that Mr. Andrews will review with you is much more concrete. And once again, there's two ways of looking at it. One is the district versus the state, but the more important one is when we get into those sheets, you'll see our growth percentages in addition to our achievement percentages, and you'll see our data for the last 3 years compared to itself. Okay?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair and Superintendent Parentozzi, for outlining those improvements. So we're going to start with an overview of all 3 tests and then go into each test area separately, and always looking at 74 students, all students grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 together. Looking at any fewer than that, it's hard to really make any predictions or generalizations. So on the first page that you have, we have this report here, which is showing the one thing that's nice, that's convenient, I guess, for us, is that we are statistically very similar in a lot of ways to the state. And so when you see, okay, we had, for example, in ELA, we had 11% of our students were exceeding the expectation of the state. And so how does that compare to the rest of the state? Well, 10% were at that level in the state. So if you look at our numbers right now in ELA, we're performing very similarly to the state. One notable exception is that we're in the not meeting expectations, we're lower. And again, with the number of 74 students, I'm not sure what value you'd have to give to have a difference, but it's probably close to 10% to actually call it statistically different, because we're looking at fewer than 100 students here for our sample size. Next graph shows math, and here we're looking at how, in mathematics, how we did compared to the state. You'll see that we had, pretty much similar for exceeding expectations, meeting a bit lower than the state, and partially meeting a bit higher than the state. Not meeting was lower, though, so that was a good thing. And again, if you look to the left, we're talking about 2 students. So again, with statistics, with just having this population size, again, we need a little bit more to make some assumptions. Last one, science technology. We really met the state level there. I'd say we're equal to the state, and in terms of how we performed achievement-wise. And this is really focusing on achievement. This is just the nut of how did the student perform, not how are they doing better and how are they growing, which is what Mr. Parentozzi was referring to. And that's a lot more about what the state is now focusing on is growth and improvement. And that's what we'll get into on the next page. The next page, actually, this one here is talking about achievement in math over time. And here we're comparing 75 students to a different 75 students to a different 75 students. But you can see that over time, we're staying fairly consistent. This past year, we had more students that exceeded expectations than last year. But again, it's a different group of students. And then on the next page, we have a growth report. And this is combining school achievement, kind of the overall how we did. This has got 2 circles on it. Overall how we did, but also how we grew. And so the really great thing to note here, I think, is that in grade 6 they had a lot of growth. If you look at the chart below the graph, if you call that a graph, that's a couple of dots, but on the chart below the graph, you'll see under mean SGP. SGP is student growth percentile. And so they take all the students that were at a certain level and compare them to other students that are like them, and how much did they grow compared to their, say, friends across the state. A 50 would be in the dead middle, because we're looking at a percentile. And so a 73.6 is quite good, and a 60.7 for the school overall in math is really also, I think, quite good. It's showing that our growth was 10% higher than the rest of the state in math in those grade levels.
So when you're talking about growth, so looking at grade 6 last year, that was growth, just looking at grade 6 from grade 5 scores to their results in grade 6? Is that correct?
No, it's talking about each student has an individual amount that they grew. Mm-hmm. They take the whole cohort, and so if I was a needs improvement kid for that test, I'd be compared to all those kids. And then the next year, they compared my score to that same cohort that they made the previous year. It's a pretty compounded statistic.
Okay. Makes sense.
What it's trying to do is it's trying to show how our students improved compared to other students across the state.
In their same group.
Right, and that's how they find it, basically. So the mean, as you can see on the graph, it says state 49.9, 49 on that column. So that X in the middle shows you, that's the middle of everything. And we're a bit lower in achievement, but we're higher in growth. So we're below 50, which is the x-axis, the y-axis on the left-hand side there is showing us the achievement, and on the bottom we're seeing mean SGP, and the middle student growth percentile. So that was mathematics.
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure the school committee members understand the difference between growth and achievement. If there are 10,000 fourth graders taking the MCAS last year, coming up this year, there's going to be X number of thousands of fifth graders. That's the comparison. Locally, it's our kids to our kids, and the percentages are all the kids who took the test last year, as compared to achievement, where it scores. And the cybermetric specialists believe that growth is much more important over time for students because of the impact of early childhood experiences and variation in knowledge level at a certain grade. But obviously, our students who grew fast this year, their achievement theoretically will be higher next year because they grew fast. So
That's right, yeah.
that's, and we shall see.
Going to the next category of ELA, we're looking at year-to-year scores. So, Johnson School students over time, or how our school's done over time, staying largely consistent year to year with, you can notice an uptick in exceeding expectations in 2019 as compared to 2018. But again, that 4 percentage points should be taken into account the fact that 25% of the kids are different from the previous year. So it's not all the same students, but a lot of the students are the same because not everybody graduated. We just lost one class. Okay. And then on the page after that, you'll see this growth chart here, which again shows a lot of positives. You can see that in ELA, we were already strong with respect to the state in achievement. So because our dots are higher than that X going up, they're above the X, that means that they were, the higher achievement anyway, and then going to the right of the X also means that we had higher growth. So we had both higher achievement than the state and higher growth, and again, pointing out that the 6th grade class really did a great job last year. We don't have information on the other two classes because they're too small. If you have fewer than 20 students, they won't give you an answer about how the growth was.
But they do count in the total.
Right, they count in the school total, which is the 74 students that we have enrolled.
So the last bar at the bottom, grades 3 to 8, that's all the students who took the test. Mm-hmm. Whereas they don't give you data if you just have, for obvious reasons, it's easily identifiable data.
Mm-hmm. And you notice the blue circle is bigger because that's more kids. So they're actually showing you different sized dots. Mm-hmm. All right, and then last page is science. In science, they don't have all the same reports because we are still using a bit of a more of a legacy way of looking at things compared to what they're doing with math and ELA. So we're using still the advanced proficient needs improvement warning for some of the years. But we are seeing that, we did quite well over time. I think you'd say eliminating the warning and failing students. So most recently, we had none, although why am I noticing this is 2018?
Are they mislabeled, or is it, that they didn't put the 19 results in? Or should it be 17, 18, 19?
This is just how it came out from, this is a, I'm guessing that this is accurate, but the labels are wrong, because I don't remember it being 0% last year for warning. I'm just noticing that now that the years, in the top graph,
You're remembering that we actually had some warning
okay.
students last year?
No, I'm looking at, I see what they did. They have 2016, 17, 18, and then the very top one is 19. Okay. So not, if you look that way, we had, an increase in not meeting expectations. And this is, we're talking about a class of 13 students right here. Okay.
It's hard to say if there was actually an increase because just of the different,
Right, we're
not
talking
meeting
about 23
expectations.
students from, 2018, we had 23 students take the test, and then the following year, we had 13 students take the test.
and also just the different, warning, failing, and needs improvement.
Right.
Do those
You can't
both
really compa-
equal
yeah.
not meeting expectations? You've got two different scales, so.
And you have 23 students, 13 different students, 22 different students. So every time, it's a completely different group of students.
Right.
And it's a small group. Whereas if we had if we had a whole school measurement that we could do, science is different because it's only one class. You only get 1 year in 5th grade. Overall, I really think that the teacher's doing a great job, looking at the standards, targeting where we need to grow, and trying a lot of new approaches. We're using math centers, again, from last year. We're continuing using that weekly, and students are really enjoying that. And I see the level of engagement really high. We're also focusing on doing a lot more turning and talking, working in small groups verbally, just so that we have more conversation about the work, and so that there is a higher level of brain engagement. Across the state right now, they're looking at this deeper thinking theme. And Commissioner Riley is encouraging schools to research deeper thinking and how you can really, work strongly with material and make it your own. And I think that we're adopting some of those approaches right now, and they'll continue to help us going forward. Do you have questions?
So in general, for a layperson at home, trying to have kind of a cumulative bird's eye view of how the Johnson Elementary School performed on the MCAS, you gentlemen have done a great job kind of deciphering this. I think for us, it's painstaking, I imagine, on your part, and it's helpful, But if we kind of step back and take a bird's eye view, my impression is that we are performing about at expectation to sometimes demonstrating growth above the state average as a school, not looking year to year, but kind of looking big picture, at least for math and ELA. And I'm not sure if that's accurate. And then the science and technology bit seems a little bit harder for me to tease out.
Okay, so that's pretty close, yes. So in math, the state labeled us as exceeding expectations for growth.
Yep.
And I don't believe that is shown on this. This report was put up pretty recently. I've been looking at all the different areas that we can get data from. And so if you took, and it doesn't separate math and ELA on here, in mathematics, we're exceeding expectations,
Okay.
and in ELA, making substantial progress towards meeting goals. But yes, absolutely. We're really quite happy with how we're doing in the areas. And then the area of science, you're right. On this, you can't say anything about it because it's 13 students compared to 23 different students.
Okay.
So it's a different, it's just a different whole group of students. And it's too small a group to say, these dogs are different than these dogs. They're just, 10 dogs that you picked from random and another 10 dogs from, random. So
Right.
you can't
Sample
compare.
size is very small.
Yeah, it's too small. Whereas with when you look at the whole 3 to 6, you can see over time, math and ELA, there's growth.
Okay.
Are there any, do they provide any statistics that compare Tier 1 accountable schools to other Tier 1 accountable schools?
Sure thing. So there's one, and I'll be looking at that this year. They have a DART analysis, as a district analysis resource tool, and you can pick a town that's like yours. And so they might say, okay, Orange, you're similar to Nahant because you're this size and your income ratios, and then we'll look at that level next. So typically what happens is they'll release the scores to us. We start off with, how did my kid do? Make sure we get that to the teachers, get this to you, and then our next steps, we'll continue working with this information, and on our November 1st Professional Development Day, we'll be looking at strand analysis, where we see what areas of math we want to focus on, and also looking at district-to-district comparison. So we can find another size district that's like us to say, how did we do? And if you'd like, I can bring that back to you.
I think that's something I would like to see. I mean, as a parent and, somebody who picks your community to live in based on a public school, I think that's actually really worthwhile
Sure.
data. I don't know if we can do anything with it or if it kind of changes anything.
Well, sure, it gives
I
you a report
personally
of...
would be curious.
Right. And what I have also done is just compared our statistics to the state statistics on our demographics. And in those two areas, if you want to just compare it to the whole state, it's a fairly fair it's a pretty much a fair comparison, actually.
Oh.
I mean, in some of the minority comparison areas, it's not, but socioeconomic and other things. So there are in special education rate is a little ours is a little higher than the state. So it's I think using the state is not a bad benchmark.
Okay.
But I think using another town that's somewhere else in the state that has more similarities could be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I probably should have asked that question first. Like, how do we compare to the whole state? And you answered that, so.
Mm-hmm.
So, Madam Chair, there's actually a variety of ways of looking at data. Parents received their own child's MCAS report. And for most parents, that's what matters most. How is my child doing? And secondly, to a teacher, the item analysis, the strand analysis, which says, okay, our students did really, really well in these types of questions or this kind of math concept. Boy, I got to really beef up this piece. That's really interesting, and that's really the value of a standardized test for a professional educator. The data is the data, as you know, there's 15 ways of cutting it. Growth is very important, and our growth is up. That's good. When we compare ourselves to our peer communities, I did look at that. We're okay. We have nothing to be outrageously excited about or nothing to be concerned about. But the real value is a parent knowing where their child is versus other children in the same grade level, in the same school and in the state, and our teachers knowing where the gaps were in the previous groups of students so that we can work together as a team to fill those gaps, not for the test, but for the learning. And I want to be real clear about that. If we drilled our students to pass MCAS, we would do a lot better. But that's, you don't earn a living by doing well on an MCAS test. You earn a living by problem solving, being good with people, loving science, and all the very positive things that we think the Johnson School has going for it.
Great.
And one of those is civility, which is the next.
Yes. So if there aren't any more questions on that for tonight, I'm happy to go to my principal's report. And the first, right before the MCAS, after the MCAS results, you'll see the take the civility pledge. And this past Friday, I was able to attend the village church's breakfast. They invited me to join them, and they also included the library themselves and us are all working together to spread the idea that by respecting one another, by using language that is respectful and considering others' ideas, we can work together to a better end. And so we're going to be taking this on as part of the project next week when we're painting banners out behind the school with Wes Sam Bruce, the artist who's coming. So the civility pledge, you'll see parts of that. We're going to be using also the Johnson School Code of Conduct: kind, cooperative, respectful, responsible, honest, and be your best self. Each grade level will be illustrating or writing a poem about that on a banner. It'll be at the school for a period, and then other organizations in town have asked if they could display the banner after we're done. And so it's going to be an outreach from our school to the rest of the town, and thinking about how much tumult there is across the nation right now amongst adults, and maybe kids can help by leading by example, or by sharing their thoughts on these things. So if you see those banners around town, that's what they're about, and they'll be made next week, be at the school for a period, and then they're going to go out to locations. So you'll see them at the bank, you'll see them at the pizza place, things like that. And then I want to also let you know Northeastern University is continuing to do some great field trips for our students. The marine science field trips continue. Today I just heard from a parent who's in this room. Ryan Sherlock got to go to the thicket today, and he had a great time.
I was thrilled.
Came back very excited. I believe they were adopting a tree, and they recognize a tree, they tag it with professional notation, and they come back in a year and they say hello to the tree again and see what's different. And so that was down in the thicket. And then fourth grade also did their study of doggy beach erosion, which is a great lesson in how beaches change over time. Really nice way to tie in something that makes sense for Nahanters, because we can see our beaches changing, and it's nice to have our fourth graders out there as citizen scientists recording those changes. And they're using their regular everyday math skills to do it. So that's fantastic. It really builds an understanding of why we're doing this stuff. So thanks to Northeastern for continuing those great field trips. And also to the COA, the Council on Aging, for providing the transportation. Tomorrow, speaking of field trips, the school students will be going to the Peabody Essex Museum to see Wes Sam Bruce's exhibit. If you haven't had a chance, it's really engaging. You get to go inside of the artwork. You get to touch the artwork. Nahant is actually featured in the exhibit. If you look closely, you'll see some clues and also some information about a resident of Nahant who was part of this project. And you should also know that Mary Jo Mitchell worked with Wes Sam Bruce on a piece of artwork. That's not going to be in the exhibit, but that'll be featured next week during our Outdoor Discovery Days events. And finally, I wanted to say thank you to the Nahant Historic Society's director, Julie Tarmy, came out to our school and shared some wonderful work from a student from the 1800s in Massachusetts who really showed that a student at 13, if they focus, can accomplish a great thing. And they put together a really nice portfolio, and Ms. Tarmy brought that into the students and shared it with the class, and I could see they were really impressed with the level of care that was put into it. In the area facility, I want to let you know that we're having the slide installation is scheduled to start on Columbus Day, October 14th, when the students will not be here. That is a pencil on the schedule, and it allows for the potential to have the slide installed before the end of next week. So if all goes well, that's where we'll be by the end of next week, which is really exciting, because we'll also be having some celebrations around just the fact that the Forest Playground's coming together. We mentioned the picnic benches and the picnic tables and the benches that were delivered. Thanks again to the 6th grade class for contributing those to the Forest Playground project. Really nice feature to have out there. And finally, I want to let you know that the mural painting will start next week. So you approve that. It's going to have an ocean marine theme, and that'll be on the asphalt behind the school. Mr. Gagliolo has been priming that, getting that ready. We put down 20 gallons of paint so far. Moynihan's having a special, $10 a gallon specials in Beverly, so I've been driving that over. So I drove 30 gallons over so far. And I don't know how much West San Bruce is going to have to buy to make the mural, but that's about the size of a soccer field or something over there, it looks like anyway. So it's quite a bit of paint, but it's going to be exciting. The kids will be working on it. Please, I welcome you to stop back there or volunteer for a shift. I'll be sending an email out with volunteer hours that people can participate in. And on October 17th, Alistair Mook will be performing a celebration concert at 1:15, and we're having a ceremony starting at 1 o'clock on Thursday, October 17th. If anyone here can make it, we'd love to have you. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, moving on to old business and other pending matters. The first thing on here is the parent guardian survey. So I closed that survey late on the 29th, 30th, and we had 57 respondents in the end. So it did bump up between our last meeting and now. I started to download the results, and I'm trying to put it into a presentation format, so I plan to have that for the next meeting to share with all. So, let's see. And next thing on the agenda is the new and departing student survey update.
Madam Chair, in your packet labeled 7B, you have the first of our new and departing student survey results. These are the results of 4 students, and it's pretty simple. The comments speak for themselves. All of the students went to public charter schools. 50% of them left for curriculum reasons, and it's not that the curriculum taught at the Johnson School was deemed to be a poor curriculum. It was really deemed to be limited. That's very clear. And 50% of the students were interested in a different social group or a larger social group. The answer to number 3 is, once again, in narrative, so it's easy to understand. We're talking about things that are offered at a larger, more diverse school. The interesting thing about question 5 is 3 out of the 4 parents of the students said that there's a likelihood, 3 out of 5, that they would return. And we will continue to do this. Obviously, four students is not a statistically significant, but anecdotal information is always good too.
I could add, Superintendent Parentozzi, that we did send it out to 16 students, or 16 families, So Ms. April was able to look back at who has left previously, and also perhaps who left and came back, and sent it to them as well. So we're working to really make sure that this gets out. So there's something like 25 students between new and departing total.
Right. So we'll continue to update this and bring it to you.
Thank you.
Next item is the student information form, and I want to thank Mr. Andrews and Ms. April for both of these. They've been working on them very diligently, in addition to all of their other responsibilities. So what you see, and just to make sure you see it, this is printed on both sides. So this is what we've come up with so far. It would be filled in by the current data we have in our School Brains data package. Given to a parent, we believe we're going to do it at the end of January, you know, the kind of the semester turn. Have them look at it, make sure it's correct, and then that will be used in future years as the base for the registration, so that a parent didn't have to fill out the same information 7 times. It's self-explanatory. There are going to be other documents that are required because some of the documents are much too complex to add it to this. And once again, Mr. Andrews is to be commended for his good work in this regard.
Thank you, Superintendent Parentozzi. If I can add a couple things. We removed year of graduation. That was a great recommendation. Thank you for catching that, Madam Chair. And otherwise, I believe this part of it is similar to what you saw last time. We also, when we met with Ms. April, Mr. Lockwood, myself, and looked at what of the forms could be done once and then stored. And once you enroll, you know, maybe you're not going to change from being a military family. Once you're a military family, that's not going to undo. And so that question maybe, or that form that we have could stay once we know that piece of information. So what we're doing is we're making a one and done folder. And so we're thinking about which of the forms do we not have to send back every year? Some we want to have every year, some we don't need every year. And so I'm going to be working next with Superintendent Parentozzi on what the state guidelines are and legal requirements are. For example, walking field trip. If you said yes in 2nd grade, do you have to say yes in 3rd grade again? You may, depending on the question. And so, however, we are going to be doing that. We're also going to be making it into one long document that's going to be on the website, so that if someone's new and registering and they can't make it to the school to get a packet, it's going to be one long PDF with all those forms to print at home, if they choose. So that's phase 2 of the project. So phase 1, we feel pretty confident that, this is good to go, this sheet here, with getting as much as we could from the packet we send home. And next step is looking at things that we don't think we can get on here, as Mrs. Parentozzi had mentioned. What can we do to decrease that workload as well, or that bureaucratic piece? And it would help all of us, really, I think.
And I'm sorry, when is the date that you'd be sending these home for review?
We're looking at doing a sort of a dry run in January. So after the new year.
It also makes sense to update our database halfway through the school year. Things change. So, individual parents do, in fact, give us new information, but some don't. So it'll be a more valid database when we actually use it.
That sounds great. I'm glad you're making progress on that. Thank you.
Sure.
See, so next, Johnson Elementary School proposed projects and fundraising update.
Madam Chair, we have a very short report. At this time, we've put this on hold once again because the major expenditure would be to change our current library in a significant way, and we need to get a structural engineer to give us an opinion of whether or not Mr. Andrews and I have good ideas or whether we have dangerous ideas in terms of the structure. So when we have that, then we'll move forward. But we want to thank all of the community members who have donated to a variety of our projects, mostly the Forest Playground, of course, but we continuously get donations from our extraordinarily generous community members and residents, and we want to make sure we thank them.
And I can also add that there will be a recognition sign going up on the Forest Playground. I've been working with Melise Tria on the design of that and with an engraver. So you'll notice that with respect to donations and fundraising.
That's great. Thank you. And lastly is the Forest Playground update.
Oh,
Did we kind of cover that? Or
I think we're covered with, we covered that.
scattered throughout?
Yes. Unless you have any questions.
No. Okay, moving on to new business. The October 1st enrollment report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The document labeled 8A in your packet shows you the last 3 years, including this current year's enrollment in the school. There's a variety of ways of looking at this. You could draw a line from, for example, grade 1 in 17, grade 2 in 18, and grade 3 in 2019. And what you'll basically see is a little bit of movement, but not much. I think the most significant numbers on this enrollment report are what's happening in preschool and kindergarten. In 2017, we had 34 students involved in kindergarten and preschool. In 2018, we had 35, and this year we have 53. That bodes positively for our enrollment in the future. And I know for many years we have been experiencing a drop in these numbers, and we seem to have turned that corner. And now we're seeing, for a variety of reasons, but hopefully one of the reasons is that the parents and guardians of the children who go to the Johnson School talk to their friends and neighbors and are positive about the experiences of their children, both academically, artistically, and socially. That certainly is our goal.
Right?
Good to see that steady increase.
Just driving around town, it seems like I'm seeing lots of babies and youngsters, and I don't know if it's because we had nice weather this weekend and I was around, but it just seems like there's lots of little ones in town, and maybe this is a reflection.
It does seem that way.
You think so too?
Seems like, and again, this is simply a perception, but it seems like there are an increasing number of families moving to Nahant from the greater Boston area in general, from more urban environments to here, working professionals and such, all different families, but it's great to see. Good to see busy playgrounds.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and next is the class size report. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a more complex report. The first diagram on the document labeled 8B is really a repetition of the previous one you've just seen, except it's backwards. It goes the other way. In the middle, you see preschool enrollment. We have 36 total students enrolled in preschool. Preschool A is one section, preschool B is another. Preschool B only is in session on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Preschool A is in session on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and you see the numbers as they are indicated. We have 2 teachers and 1 paraprofessional in the preschool this year, and it's been going very well. Obviously, on Tuesday and Thursday, the numbers are lower, but there's 1 teacher and 1 paraprofessional, so it's basically a 10-to-1 ratio all the time. And of course, these are enrollments, and you, as I'm sure you're aware, preschool attendance can be very strong for some children and not so much for others. So it's an unusual day when 100% of the students are there, but this would be a maximum. Okay. And please stop me anytime you have a question. The next diagram shows you our after-school enrollment totals once by day. Once again, that would be the enrollment, not the attendance. And there are days when the numbers are much lower, and there are days when the numbers are higher. And as you can see, Wednesdays and Fridays are low day, and Tuesdays and Thursdays are high days, which is interesting because it's a mirror image of our preschool numbers. We also have our before school program. That's the program that starts at approximately 7 a.m. and ends at approximately 7:50 a.m. when the students report to their classrooms. Their breakfast is involved in that program. And on an average day, we have 7 students and 1 staff member. And then the Lunch Bunch program is the preschool extension program. When the preschoolers go home at approximately 11:30, these students go to lunch. Then they stay with a staff member for some period of time. They can go home at 2:30. They could stay in the after-school program, so they may be part of the numbers for the after-school program, and then they could stay in the after-school program till 4:30 or 5:30. Obviously, a parent can pick up their child from the after-school program at any time. I posted a staff member for this program today because we feel that 12 to 1 for that length of time, the staff member needs some break, and these are young children, and it would be a part-time job, but the person would give them, our staff member, a break, drop the numbers down, obviously. We try to have this program be educational, not just care, and so that would be hopefully giving our students a real leg up on kindergarten in terms of knowing the basics, alphabet, numbers, identification of inanimate objects, identification of animals, all those very basic things that we want our children to go to kindergarten learning. So there's the numbers as we sit right now.
Thank you.
And currently at the after-school program, there are 2 adults at all times at the after-school, not lunch bunch.
Sure. So if I can just speak to the staffing for a moment, we added a staff member to the after-school program. So now we actually have 3 staff members every day until 4:15. And we are seeing increases in enrollment in both the Lunch Bunch and in, Lunch Bunch used to be 5 or 6 students, and then it would be, oh, now it's 10. Now it's every day there's 12, every single day. And so we want to make sure that, as Mr. Parentozzi mentioned, since we have this consistent demand, that we can meet that.
That's great.
And then in the after-school program, this will also allow us to program more
Yes.
during the after-school. So one change you'll see right off is students who don't have homework have a recess, while students who have homework are inside doing their homework. And then we're having two activities, probably 2 or 3 activities a week planned for either a craft or a design challenge, or other type of, more highly engaging, I guess you could say, or more, not more engaging, more structured, I guess, for students who want to opt in. And these would be opt-in, where you have a table set up with materials, and during the week, that student can decide to participate in that craft activity.
Fantastic.
Sure, that's fine.
All right, moving on to personnel matters. Mr. Parentozzi?
It's hard to believe, but we have been stable for 2 weeks. All of the staff members that Mr. Andrews and I hired have stayed and have all their paperwork done at Town Hall. And we are really fortunate to have a variety of staff members that we hired who bring a real talent to the Johnson School. I believe last time I told you that we were having difficulty finding a speech and language therapist because it was part-time, and I had hired 3 different people nominally who all got full-time jobs. So what I was able to do was stretch the salary in the salary budget to incorporate a full-time position. So our speech and language therapist is also working with our students on academic endeavors, and that's excellent for us because this individual has a bachelor's degree in special education from New York State. So we have not only somebody who's a licensed speech and language therapist, but someone who is a special education teacher. So that has alleviated a few areas of stress that we had. Number one, our paraprofessionals were stretched pretty thin, and our special education department was stretched a little bit. So that's really helped, and the staff member has, as a matter of fact, I spoke to her at the end of the day today. She's very pleased with the job, and she's, by all indications, doing a great job. And that's basically it, other than the posting of the part-time lunch bunch supervisor. We're happy.
Great, good. Nice to know that people are staying and happy and.
Yep.
Yep. Good.
Yeah, it was a tough August. People are attracted to Nahant, for obvious reasons. It's a wonderful place to work. But the part-time jobs are tough. And, but, we're fully staffed, and kids have some new faces to learn, some new names to learn. We have a staff member who has an African name, so it's really different for us, but it's good. Diversity is a strength.
Great. Okay, so moving on to business from the committee. Anyone have anything? No.
I have something I should have asked probably earlier.
Go for it.
I'm sorry. So I did receive a question from a community member about the Tier 1 review that is scheduled to occur at the school. And my understanding is that is a standard routine review that's done at public schools. The question that was asked to me was, is it being done for any particular concern that's been raised?
That's a great question, and actually it's just the opposite. Based on our MCAS results and our filing 3 years ago of our full accreditation audit, we are in the highest tier possible in the Commonwealth. There is no such thing as a tier 0 or a tier 0.5. There are 5 tiers. Number 1, tier 1 is the highest performing schools and districts in the state. So that means that our mid-cycle report and visit is going to be just about civil rights and other policies and programs, including special education, as compared to the full once every 6 years, where it's all the aspects of the educational program. So it's a really good question. The community and the school committee should be pleased that we are having a Tier 1 report. As a matter of fact, that was on one of the documents you saw,
Yes.
Tier 1.
I gathered that, so it's good to understand that the state visit is less intense than it otherwise would have been if we weren't performing so highly, and that what they are reviewing is something that is routinely reviewed at schools throughout the state. It's not out of particular concern in regards to civil rights or, it's not reflective of concerns that we are deficient in those sections. It's to make sure that we're up to par.
That's correct.
Great.
Yeah, the most useful and positive and appropriate way to look at a Department of Elementary and Secondary Education visit for a Tier 1 school is that in the course of time, laws, regulations, and requirements change. They change very rapidly in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There are about 7,000 bills filed every year. Obviously, 7,000 don't come into law. But what may happen is a bill may be filed, it doesn't go into law, but the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education may say, oh, that's a really good idea, we'll make it a regulation. And so sometimes you miss them through no fault of your own. I mean, there's no clearinghouse where you can go to a site every week and say, okay, what's new in education? If there was, it would be a very busy place. So these audits really help us stay on the ball, stay with it. Mm-hmm. As you remember, last spring, I asked you to pass a new policy because I said, we need this policy about homeless students. That law went into effect, it wasn't January 1st, but it may have been February or March 1st of 2019. And that is one of the things that this current audit is looking at. So we have that policy. Okay. Today I found out that our family engagement policy and our school communication policy needs a little work, but nothing dramatic. Obviously, in our handbook, we have guidelines for communicating with parents. We do a really good job of it, but, the things that we do implicitly, the state is much more of a desire to have it explicit in a policy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The only other thing I was going to mention is we had spoken about doing a second survey to the older grades, the upper grades, in the fall.
I'm still
You game?
all for it. Oh, yes.
Do you want to start drafting it, the questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm happy to work with you on it again.
I hope we get some response. I hope that, that people don't feel as though, they're so broken off and from here, that they're over there. I hope they see how it could be helpful, you know.
So I would think
District-wide.
that the question should be targeted to things that may be of concern that we could
Maybe
some way have action on, just like you were mentioning, the bus schedule, and such, or,
might even be helpful to take a look at the memorandum of understanding or agreement that we have that's attached to the contract with Swampscott, and take a look at some of those things that we had said that we would work on together, and try to shape some questions around that to make sure that we are following that agreement, and that the students are getting what they need and what we intend for them to have going over to Swampscott. So
that's a place to start, I think.
yeah, absolutely, I'm all for it.
Okay. All right, perfect. Anything else?
I just have one announcement, and that is that the band has 8 members signed up at the Johnson School Band. I redoubled my efforts to recruit students, and parents decided that it was a worthy cause, and so we're going to be starting tomorrow.
It's awesome, and so that's 4th through 6th grade, is that correct?
That's right. The 3rd graders get recorders, though.
Yes, I know. I'm hearing it a lot. And loving it. Great. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the October 8th school committee meeting at 8:35.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.